Welcome, dear audience, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad you're here with us again, and I'm even more happy that we have not only our fantastic guest, Ellie Fields, with us, but we have our Thomas back. And what do you observe? Suddenly the intro works properly, the sizes are in shape, and yes, the man knows how to play these little things, which are, through some observers, just think they don't really realize how important these little things can be. Now, back to that, Thomas, I'm very grateful that we have it now better in shape again. We had the opportunity to think about a lot of stuff in the last two episodes, and now we are back in a field which is playing with the word of Ellie Fields, back in the field of something which is critically important, especially in challenging times, sales. Because these people which drive sales are the fortune and the potential to help customers to do good stuff. They are your enablers if you join in, for instance, to the solution, which is in this case SalesLoft, a sales engagement platform. And when I did the research, I was a bit curious, such as, will the audience already know what are the key differentiators and the key moments of excitement, fun, and benefit? What SalesLoft can deliver to them as a really cool benefit, and they are not yet aware of it. So welcome, Ellie. I'm very grateful that you're with us, and the floor is yours. And I'd love to hear something about your background and your former business steps.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Let's see. I'm the Chief Product Officer at SalesLoft. Engineering, product management, design, research, and support flow up through my organization, and we together are responsible for envisioning what the future of sales looks like. That's how I think about our job. What is the best way to support sellers with technology? In my career, I've been at SalesLoft now about a year and a half, maybe a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I spent about 12 years at Tableau Software prior, and am a big data geek. I love data, but one of the things that brought me to SalesLoft is that I very strongly believe that data must be in the workflow to be used by most people. I mean, you've definitely got your folks who are going to sit and look at dashboards all day, and there's a place and a time for that. But I think the real promise of data is to put it right where people are working to help them make small decisions, help them take action, and SalesLoft does that. So very, very exciting to be here. Prior to that long stint at Tableau, I was
Mm-hmm.
at a variety of places. I've been at Microsoft, did some time in venture capital, late stage venture capital and private equity, and did my MBA at Stanford.
Quite
Wow.
impressive.
Yep.
Yo,
Got me beat.
Yeah, what? And now
no,
talking to a few geeks.
what was the drive to go from sales, or from the data, which is in columns and lovely pictures, to the real action? Because there is a difference, and enable people to do the best, or to get the best out of them and make them do their job easier, is something which I found really getting me the kick. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sales has been, I would say, underserved by technology for a long time, and sellers have very hard and complicated and extremely important jobs, as you alluded to. The life and death of many companies rests directly on its sellers. And sellers have been kind of forced to do this swivel chair workflow, checking multiple inboxes, trying to understand all the different things that are happening. In the last decade or so, there's been a big explosion in sales technology. And there's been an explosion in channels too. I mean, you don't have to just call a customer now. You can email them, of course. You can text them. You can LinkedIn them, you can do all kinds of things. All of those are good for sellers, but the job of selling was still too hard. And the thing that attracted me to SalesLoft was for everybody who loves to build products, you love to build products that actually help people get things done and help make people happier. And in many cases, I think technology lets people get back to the job they were intended to do. Sellers were intended to connect with buyers and to guide them and to help strategize and deliver value. And that's what great sellers like to do, but they're stuck in this world of, well, let me check my email and let me check my this and let me do this and wait, I have a task over here. And so what really brought me was the promise to help build that, to build the workflow, and as you said, take the action.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've left the world of data, because the truth is, in everything we do today, there is data. And I think workflow in particular has the promise of having data and action very tightly coupled. And the more that you can learn from the actions that people take, what are the outcomes, what's effective, what makes people more productive, you can take that data and feed it back in to make your workflow better and to help people take those decisions. So that was why I made the shift, although it feels a lot closer than it may seem.
Why do you think that salespeople have been underserved? Because at the end of the day, CRM software from its origins started as Salesforce automation, contact management, account management, so it was always already targeted at salespeople.
Totally agree. And CRMs have been around for decades. Why I say that sellers were underserved is that the CRM was a great advancement and a very important system still to this day. We work with multiple CRMs at SalesLoft and don't intend to replace them. But the CRM was really built as a window into a database. Right? The CRM is a database of your accounts and opportunities and your contacts, and most CRMs are organized around letting you see one of those tables at a time and all the fields, and kind of go through that information. The CRM was never organized as a system for selling, for sellers. And I know there were elements of Salesforce automation, a couple of decades ago, but the CRM is really, to me, it's a system of record. What
Okay.
SalesLoft does is we try to take all the tools that a seller needs, whether it be calling out to a customer or your email, and put them all in the same place with the context from the CRM of who that person is and what the opportunity is,
Mm.
and make it easier to take that action. And the sometimes the way I explain it is, in the CRM you may have a task list that you can keep, a set
Mhm.
of reminders or tasks, but you have to go read it and then go do the thing, right? I have to read it and then I have to call the customer and go read it and do this. And maybe I have to go log things into the CRM. And all of that is kind of swivel chair administrative overhead for a seller. What
Mm.
if your task list said, call this buyer, and you click the button and it called, right? And then when that call was done, it logged, and you just went on to the next task. And so as a seller, so much more of your time is spent on those customer facing tasks, on working with your buyers. And that's what a system of engagement does. It's organized with the central concept being the seller and the work they have to do, versus a record of accounts. And let me help you see into that database.
Yeah. Can you implement in such a sales engagement platform also sales methodologies?
Yes, you can. There are a number of things that you can do in SalesLoft to kind of enforce a methodology, or spread a
Yeah.
methodology. In the core workflow tool, the cadence tool, it's basically a way to run sales plays. So sometimes we hear customers say, I want to take my best seller or my best sales motion and replicate that across my team. So that might mean that when you reach out to a buyer, you want to contact them a couple of different ways the first day, and then maybe follow up the second day, and maybe there's an offer or a gift or something. You have this whole play that you run to connect with that buyer. You can codify that play as a workflow or as a cadence, we
Okay.
call it, and then roll that out. And then sellers, instead of trying to think, oh, when did I last contact that buyer? Was it 3 days ago? And should I contact them again? They've got a play that comes up, and they just say, hey, it's day 3. It's time to contact that buyer again. Here's a template for doing that. Personalize it, send it out, and you can run that play. There are also ways that you can implement methodologies like MedPick into
Yeah.
our opportunity management. So we do that in our own Salesforce. Actually, we use MEDPIC, and we implement that in our deals product.
That was exactly the idea I had behind a question, such as
Okay.
that you help me to understand what you probably that you are walking your talk, and that you eat your own dog food, and that you have found a way you like how to cover the buying center, how to cover the person of interest and the influencers, and how you do it in conjunction with your fantastic engagement platform. Um, you said you utilize or you have access to several CRMs.
Our system connects to several CRMs. So we have customers that use Salesforce, of course, the big one. Dynamics, we've seen really on the rise in the market, and we connect to that as well with a very first-class connection, and we see a lot of activity around HubSpot as well. And then there are a number of customers that use other CRMs or custom CRMs that we support. But those are the three we support natively.
Okay. How easy is it to connect to a new, let's say, CRM like Zoho, like Sugar, like Freshworks?
We do have customers that use those and use the SalesLoft system. The when I say there's native connection, one of the things that we do is we do a bi-directional sync, and so your CRM data is always very tightly in line with inside of SalesLoft. That's more difficult to do, and more of the burden of doing that is on the customer when they use another CRM. The other
Yeah.
thing that we do is we have an extension, a Chrome extension that sits on top of a CRM, because we see some customers
Mhm.
do want their sellers to be in the CRM, but having access to this kind of productivity system on the side. So that shows up as an extension in the CRM.
Yeah.
And we don't have that for some of those other systems.
Or don't have it yet.
We don't have it
Maybe
yet
soon.
for some
Yeah.
of those other systems. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, we're a growing company, and have a lot of success with a lot of enterprise customers. We have a number of our customers going global now, so we're definitely supporting a lot of those enterprise systems. But yes, we started years ago with Salesforce, and then went to Dynamics, and have always had a lot of HubSpot customers. So we've expanded our support there.
It's a little funny to me. Sorry, Thomas.
Marshall.
It's a little funny to me that you have so many HubSpot customers, because what you do is very similar to why a lot of people will bolt pieces of HubSpot onto their CRM systems in the first place.
Yeah, HubSpot has some of this functionality, I would say, for very small teams. And we talked to HubSpot, they're a partner. We're friends with HubSpot, and big fans of theirs. I love what they've done, both with their company, but also just kind of advancing best practices out there in the world around marketing in particular. HubSpot's great when you're getting started, and what we see is a lot of customers, when they get larger than a couple of people or one team, they need to graduate to something more. And HubSpot, their focus really has been around that kind of smaller, extremely startup, and around
Mhm.
marketing, and so that's why there's some room for a partnership.
Makes sense. What do you see as SalesLoft's sweet spot in terms of customer size? Like, who are you targeting most, do you think?
We do sell across the board. We have quite a strong enterprise base, and that's really where a lot of the future growth is, I think, because enterprises tend to be slower to adopt. So we see many of the big multinationals just now rolling out sales engagement across, sometimes the US first, sometimes Europe first, and then looking to standardize some of their sales motion, or standardize can be the wrong word. Make more rigorous their sales motion in different places around the world, because sometimes you do want different sales motions in different countries or segments, and that's good practice, in fact. But to answer your question, we sell up and down the board. We really do focus on enterprise, because they're sometimes the most demanding customers, and when we build in when we build capabilities for enterprise, like stronger governance and more segmentation and the ability to do more complex workflows, we find that a lot of the smaller customers really enjoy that as well. But they tend to be more lead adopters and a little bit less stringent on some of those capabilities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Where do you think that this CRM market in general moves?
The CRM market in general, it's a good question. I think, I mean, obviously Salesforce is out there and pushing and growing, and they have great distribution. Um, I think CRMs are going to continue to be relevant. What I spend a little bit more time thinking about is, you know, in sales technology, you can slice the market any number of different ways, and you can look at different segments by what companies are in there. I tend to try to ask the question, what would great selling look like? Like, what would great selling technology look like? What would a seller's day look like if they were well supported with technology? And work backward from there, because I find, especially when markets are moving very, very quickly, or in some cases very slowly in the CRM market, but the rest of revenue technology is moving very quickly. You can get yourself in these odd places where you're looking backwards at what was built and what markets exist because of what was built, versus what is the customer trying to achieve, where is it hard, and where can we support that better.
That
I
is,
love that perspective.
yeah,
Take a video and make a film about the day of a seller. It's the approach from Lynn Phillips. I like that very much from a different perspective, but that's an attitude which is really helping, is down to earth, and really creates benefit. I love that one.
Yeah,
Thomas.
that's what we try to do. I don't want to get too product geeky on you all, but if anyone is a fan of Clayton Christensen or reads some of the
Job to be
Innovator's
done.
Dilemma,
Yeah.
Innovator's Solution, yeah, we in product strategy, we actually spend time thinking about core jobs to be done. And I find it a really helpful framework in this kind of a market where things are moving so quickly and there's so much that's built out, but you're not sure how much of it is valuable yet. And so we really focus on what are the core jobs a seller is doing, what are the core jobs a sales manager is doing, what are the core jobs of sales enablement, and then we try to connect the dots and we try to build into those gaps.
that leads us eventually into the future. So I have to wonder, how shall I put this? Can the current generation of CRM and sales applications be saved, or do we need to start over and rebuild them from the ground up, as you seem to be able to do?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of good innovation that has been out there, and I do think we'll continue to build on it. I mean, even when you look at some of the smaller players out there that are doing gift sending, for example, or innovation on video or what have you, I think there really has been a good use of technology thinking about problems of sellers. So I wouldn't throw things out. I also think that we do need a system of record for accounts and opportunities and so on. We also need a system of record for product usage and activity data and all kinds of different data, and those will be different places, right? I think I think we'll get more comfortable with having different systems of record for different kinds of data. Where I think we need the most evolution is in this question of what's the center of gravity of sales, right? If we have, 2, 3, 4,000 products out there, which if you've seen some of the logo slides that break down the market, we probably do. Are we really expecting any one seller to use 15 of those, right? Or do we expect there to be a center of gravity, a single pane of glass, a place you start and end your day, where sellers go, and a lot of those tools can plug in? That's what we're trying to build with the SalesLoft platform, is to build that core workflow, but make it extensible so that as you do have a Vidyard or a Drift or a Sendoso or a Reach Desk, they can plug in at the right point, because what they offer is valuable, but it's a lot harder to get that value if you have another login, and another browser open, and you've got to remember what you were doing in this tab and how does it relate to that tab. It all needs to be in one place for the seller. And if you go back to that question of what does the seller's day look like end to end, the seller needs to be working in one place that's easy to use, that's intuitive, that's organized around them and their workflow. And then all of this other stuff that's out there should plug right in. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't throw it all away and start over, but I do think we need an evolution.
You would organize it differently.
Yeah. I would organize it around the seller instead of around the technology. Yeah.
That would be good. I would like that.
Why do you think it is organized around technology right now?
I think it is. It's a good question, Thomas. I think it is because there's been such a wave of innovation in the space. It's a little bit what happened in marketing tech maybe 15 years ago. And what you see when that happens often is people, companies start to grow up around one or another technique or technology. So again, I mentioned video a couple of minutes ago. There's some great innovations in videos, especially for sellers. And so you find companies organized around that. But video isn't a complete selling system, right? So you find a set of companies there. You find a set of companies that might be trying to solve problems with enablement or sales analytics, or you find dialer technologies, right? And so it's natural that things grow that way when there is this explosion of innovation. But that becomes hard for people to use. I think the industry is going to go through this next wave where we do end up with these, a few centers of gravity that others plug into.
I mean, it's at the end of the day quite a fascinating topic, because on one hand you have the big suite vendors, the I can do it all,
Yep.
which usually gets disproven, means they can't, followed up by a raft of specialty vendors who fill the gaps, but then exactly cause this dilemma of the systems being oriented towards the technology, not the person. How can this conundrum or dilemma be resolved?
That's a great question. In my career, what I've seen is in different industries, it's almost a pendulum that goes back and forth between platform and best of breed, and platform and best of breed. And you start to get these best of breed vendors when the platform gets a little too slow and doesn't take advantage of the innovation, right? And so maybe they're offering everything, but it's not at a great stage, right? And then you start to have these other vendors that see a market opportunity and come up, and they start to create these smaller companies that get some amount of traction because they're solving a problem that's very acute and they're providing enough value. And then I think what happens is those best of breed vendors start to mature, right? And they start to say, hey, it's too hard for the customer. Like, from the customer's point of view, what's great about a platform is you have one relationship, one price list, things work together. The vendor takes on the integration challenges, in some cases the governance challenges. And so it's nice to have a platform, but it's not working. So we've gone best of breed, but now we have multiple products. So we have to take on the integration and the governance and so on. And then typically one or several of those best of breed will emerge and start to do more of those jobs for the customer and become a platform, right? And hopefully do that well. And I think the timing of when that pendulum swings is, it's dependent on the pace of innovation. It's dependent on how complacent the platform vendor gets, right? Because if one of those best of breed vendors does emerge into a platform and starts to do the integration and the governance and the, giving you one point of contact, and stays very relevant and takes advantage of new technology and has the value that the customers need, then that opening for best of breed doesn't happen. And that's when I was at Tableau, that's exactly what we saw, was that there had been these business intelligence platforms for many years that everybody had one of them, right? A Business Objects or Microsoft had several tries at this, everybody had one of these big platforms, but they weren't helping people get their actual questions answered with data. And so Tableau sprung up and over time became bigger and bigger and ultimately acquired by Salesforce. But you see this going back and forth, I think, in many industries.
Now, with everybody being a platform vendor, and you use the term for yourself as well right now, what does this now mean?
Platform is one of those great words that means different things to different people at different times.
What would you like it to mean?
Your opportunity to explain your perspective.
Yes. So here's what we mean by it. It goes back to that workflow organized around a seller. We use the word platform to mean that we are going to provide the critical tools in one place for a seller. And those tools are going to work together very deeply. An example of that is we have conversations within our platform. And that means as you're looking at your activity feed of what all your buyers have been doing and what's going on out there, you can actually just pull up a conversation in there if somebody else on your team had it, right? You can see that conversation right in line. It's right there. If you're prepping for a meeting, you can review that conversation there. If you are reviewing your opportunities and you realize you really need to text your champion at a certain opportunity, you can just click a button, text them right there. It's logged and so on. So the critical pieces that work together is really the first part of what I think about with platform. And the second piece is this extensibility where other pieces can come in. And that's in contrast to a point solution, which is organized around the what instead of the why or the who, right? The what might be I have the best dialer out there. Like we're a dialer company. We've got a great dialer. It's a what. The platform is we're trying to help sellers sell better. We're trying to enable them throughout their day. And we're going to bring into the platform either with SalesLoft built native capabilities or through partners, whatever it takes to help that person do their job better.
That's cool. So the claim from some sweet friends from Cupertino, let the platform do the work. How far do you support by artificial intelligence or intelligent workflows that let the platform do the work support on your end?
Are you talking about intelligent workflows and AI, or?
Yeah, on those areas.
Yeah, I think one of the major advantages of having things in one place are those integrated workflows, right? So that the customer doesn't have to think about how the things fit together. We kind of make that happen, and so we do spend a lot of time thinking about that, and we do try to build to let the platform do the work. We're bringing out a coaching solution at SalesLoft here in a few weeks, and one of the interesting things about that is that coaching a lot of times in sales has been a bit looking where the data is versus what you actually want to achieve. So you might say, hey, I'm going to look at how many emails you sent. Let's see if you sent enough emails. But the goal is never really to send emails. The goal is to close business, right? The goal is to get to revenue and hopefully happy revenue. And so what we do is we look across everything the seller's doing because we have all that data, whether they're emailing or calling or SMSing, whatever it may be. We look across all of that and we do some work to attribute it to opportunities and meetings, and we present all of that information to the seller and their manager coach, right? And so instead of spending time, worst way to spend time is gathering that information in the first place. Terrible use of time for a sales team. We gather it all together. We present it in a way that helps them say, hey, you're doing a ton of activity, but your outcomes are a little low. Let's dig into why. Well, you're doing a ton of activity. It's mostly emailing. Let's look at what those emails say. And because we have the activity in the platform, you can actually get all the way down to each email and you can say, what are you saying in your emails? Or you had 10 conversations with this customer, but it never closed. Let's go review one of those conversations. And you can do it right there. As the manager and the seller are having the conversation, they're thinking about selling. They're not thinking about this tool or that tool. They're thinking about selling. They're able to go and, as they're thinking and talking, touch those things, review them, and get the information back. And so that's really the power of integrated workflows in the platform.
That's lovely. You help them to get the seller to get them their coffee, because coffee's for closers only, to quote.
Coffee's for closers. That's right. Right.
So I'm grateful that you help them to get their dose of coffee. Trust me, Thomas will be grateful as well, as he needs his coffee in certain amounts.
Yeah, and honestly, we do get. I love working with products that really do change people's lives in meaningful ways, and we do hear that from sellers. I mean, if sellers are successful, the company is typically successful, right? And sellers, when they are more productive, they have choices, right? They can choose to make more money because they can sell more. They can choose to maybe make the same amount of money and go home a little bit earlier. So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of wins in just taking some of the rote work of searching for information and trying to put it all together. And there's a lot of wins in taking that time out of the process.
How much artificial support is in the platform? As you mentioned, the coaching facility and opportunity, which is coming up. You mentioned the intelligent workflows, but how is the guidance with some software in the background?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of ways that guidance happens in the platform. I mentioned the cadences and sales plays and things like building in MedPick. I think the other really important way is in artificial intelligence, and we spend a lot of time building in AI into the platform, across the platform. We do it with a very specific philosophy, though. The first thing is we try to make it really rooted in value, and that shouldn't have to be said, but unfortunately, there's so much hype out there that it does. So we look at things like, um, I mentioned the outcome attribution. That's really just a bunch of data munging work. Like that's hard work, but it's really important to get it there for the sales team. We do things like looking at email sentiment. Um, we look across all opportunities and provide a deal engagement score. All of these things are algorithms that in the background are just helping sellers do the tasks they're doing every day. Sometimes I see vendors launch things and it's kind of a great demo, but you start to think, well, how would a seller use that in their day? And you have to really stretch to think about that. So that's the first thing we work on with AI. We make sure it's solving a real problem. The second thing is we make sure it's explainable. And the reason why we do that is because sellers won't use AI if they don't understand it. And that's good. They shouldn't, right? The sellers need to be able to understand why you're saying this deal is highly engaged, but that deal isn't. So every time we show a result like that, we provide some backup. We say, hey, this deal is highly engaged because they're responding to your emails and there's multiple people on the opportunity and here's a couple other reasons. And then we go to the not engaged one and we say there's only one person on the opportunity. You've sent them 3 emails in the last 2 weeks and they're not responding. So how can that be engaged? It's not, that particular thing is not rocket science. Any seller would be able to look at those opportunities and tell you the same thing, but it takes a long time to look at all that information for every deal. So explainability is important so that sellers trust and use. It's also important because you can actually teach more junior sellers what they can almost hone their intuition and help them develop intuition. And then we also our third pillar is to make sure that it's ethical. So there hasn't been so many issues of ethics in AI in the B2B world, but we do think it's important to just make sure we're looking at our algorithms for bias and helping our customers be responsible with the data they use.
Yeah. To repeat myself, there haven't been any issues yet.
Right. To date,
Yeah.
the consumer space has been much hotter in the terms of ethics and AI, but I think it's never too early to start to make sure that we don't create problems.
Yeah. Always better to be ahead of it, of
Yeah.
course. You said something that made me think just now, how AI should be there to solve problems and not, we were talking before about how I'm terrible at talking, in case you can't tell.
Okay.
A product should be based around solving a problem, not being another thing.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has become a bit of an issue with AI. For example, a lot of vendors, I should say, will advertise, here's our new AI. This is its name, and this is its avatar. I'm not going to name any names because I think that underlying those named flashy AI attempts are some very good pieces of technology and programming. But I'm guessing I've noticed, I've looked through SalesLoft stuff, and your AI just exists. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a face. I forgot what the real question is about that, but
we may give it a name one of these days. I mean, some of those branding decisions are interesting, and it helps sometimes. Sometimes it helps customers kind of organize it in their head. I don't know if it'll have a character or a face or something, but we may brand it one day. We haven't chosen to do that, and it's mainly because we do see ourselves as a workflow company, but workflow has to be supported with data. Just having workflow is not sufficient these days. You need to have workflow that is supported with AI and data. And so we haven't tried to kind of lead with AI, even though it is hypey and hot.
Now that we all mentioned this word or these two letters very often, what's your definition of AI?
Thomas, you ask the best questions.
I'm the asker of mean questions, yeah.
For a long time, I was very rigorous about how I'd use the words AI, machine learning, and data science, and analytics. And I think I got a little bit beaten down because basically I just use AI as an umbrella term for a lot of those things now, maybe a little less analytics. It's my definition of AI is it's some kind of computation on raw data that yields an insight, and that can be done without human intervention. And I'm sure that's not a technical definition, but it basically means using data to the benefit of people using your software.
It's a functional definition, which is as useful as definition is going to get. We are not academics. Well, we kind of are, but we are, at the end of the day, talking about stuff that needs to get done to keep businesses running. So as long as you understand it, there you go.
Where does analytics stop and AI start?
That's a great question. If you the way the industry is using it right now is AI is a bit of everything. I think of analytics stopping and AI starting when you get to putting it in the right place to support decision making. So analytics has got a connotation of a little bit of a human acting to answer those questions, like, hey, I'm going to go analyze a thing, I'm going to create some analytics. Whereas I think AI is more taking a few of those steps out. It's a little bit more processed to the right moment and the right insight.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. So I struggle myself with that definition.
So it's tough,
I don't have a clue.
Yeah, and even the definition I gave you is a fairly vague one. Again, to Marshall's point, very focused on what we do and how we try to create value. I also think AI has become the organic of it's just a word that means almost anything, but processing on top of data, maybe.
As soon as it appears to be magic, it's AI.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
An esteemed colleague of ours says, well, whenever there's an automated decision, it's AI. So if then else is AI.
But I think sometimes it gets characterized that way. Yeah. I will say, there's another philosophic thing that position that we try to take with AI. We actually don't want the AI to make the decisions for sellers. I do believe that there should be a human in the loop. I do believe that selling is a human activity, and the core of selling is connecting with, guiding, and delivering value for buyers. And so what we try to do a lot is we try to present AI at the point of decision, and we try to take rote work out. I mean, for example, email sentiment. We have a sales specific sentiment model, because sentiment, by the way, for sales is not the same as sentiment for a news article. A news article can be positive or negative. Sales sentiment is more about, do you intend to buy? Is there a timing objection? That kind of thing. Somebody can use very harsh negative language with you and tell you to set up a meeting on Thursday. And in the sales world, that's great because you got a meeting. So we do that, and then we present it in Gmail for the seller, so that they can just scan through their emails very quickly and say, oh yeah, I want to look at that one and that one and that one, because I can see the sentiment. But again, it's the seller's choice of the AI isn't answering their email for them. And likewise, the seller can actually change the sentiment. And that's very important to get to good accuracy, because our algorithm can figure out so much. But it's ultimately a human reading the email might say, you got it wrong. That wasn't a timing objection. That person's actually ready to buy, or what have you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's happy years, but we try to keep, we try to think very deeply about where should the human be making this decision, and where can data help with that, versus kind of letting the robots do all the thinking.
At what
Out
time?
of curiosity, facts and figures you show, such as I would like to go a bit more in depth as keeping your promise you make. You make the promise in the video and in the words that you help to sell easier, faster, optimized, with more conversions.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have to quote our dearest friend Esteban, where are the figures, where are the facts?
Great question. We do have data on that. In fact, with every customer, we do QBRs where we present their data back to them, and we have some of those in on the website and in case studies. I will tell you a few recent ones, and I'll have to do the thing where we don't say the exact name of the company, because many of these are internal. But recently,
A large car vendor or a rocket designer or something. That's fair enough.
large technology vendor, seeing 320% increase in rep efficiency for daily tasks. So measuring daily tasks and seeing 320% improvement. We had another customer beat a pipeline goal by nearly 8x their goal. Again, an enterprise customer. This was an interesting one actually, that moved from Salesforce to Dynamics as their CRM, and had SalesLoft the whole time. And so for their sellers, it was it actually provided them the chance to make that technology choice, because it was somewhat opaque to their sellers that they even moved this system. A large multinational corporation that we serve in many countries across Europe and in the US saw 3x increase in the value of their opportunities, so the dollar value of their opportunities. And we can go on. Another multinational, 672% increase of pure activities. Again, activities are not revenue, but they are an indicator. And in this case, they saw an almost 700% improvement in the activities their Salesforce could achieve, simply because they were doing less of this kind of administrative overhead.
That is rocket. That is cool. That is really cool. Such as, is your competition nearly as good as you, or would you say there is room for improvement for them, because you already found the secret grail of how to do it even a bit better?
I think we are differentiated in a few ways. I think our focus on really integrating the workflows across the platform is differentiated. I think our focus on using data and AI to in the service of the seller is differentiated, and I think that our ability to scale globally and to enterprise is differentiated. We were the first to have a data center in Europe, for example, to serve some of the European GDPR.
Love to hear that.
Yep. Yeah. We have a great, this doesn't come out on the website all the time, and I need to knock on wood, or the engineering team's going to kill me, but we have a great uptime history. We focus a lot on high quality and on being there, because really the customer doesn't care what your product does if it's down. And so we spend a lot of time on that. I'm not going to take shots at our competitors, but I am just going to say we try to serve our customers as well we can and really envision the future for them. And I think that's a differentiator for us as well. There's a lot of hotness out there. There's a lot of like, this is big, then that's big, then the other thing's big. And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. But we always just go back to how do we build the future for sellers? How do we anchor there?
A minute
You're very.
ago,
Go ahead,
Marshall.
Thomas. No, you go.
You are too silent in all of our CRMKonvos, but the last one where the voice did come over garbled. So your turn.
Okay. This one's a little more conceptual, I guess. You are very focused on sales, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say that, hey, it's in the name, but there's at least one other company out there that has sales in the name.
Oh, surprise!
I can't think of
No,
any.
I think of blue clouds, but it doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, I'm not getting it. To what extent, when you envision that future, do you have to consider what the futures are of the other pillars of CRM will be? Like, what does the future of sales look like, considering how marketing may change, or other bits of customer experience and customer service, and how
Yeah,
how
great
messed up?
question.
Yeah,
Great question. I think about that a lot. It comes back to kind of where are the seams and where are the centers of gravity. I think there will be a center of gravity in sales, and it will have very important seams with marketing and with customer service.
Yeah.
And so that makes me think about the seam when you talk about marketing in particular. You're dealing with the same customers in the same funnel when they go from marketing to sales. And obviously nobody likes the throw it over the wall approach, but I think that's still the pervasive one in the industry. And so, getting whatever you can learn from what's happened in marketing when a seller starts to deal with that customer is very important. So from a technology perspective, we go back to where's our boundary and what
Mhm.
are the important interfaces, whether that be a workflow action interface or a data interface, to open to make that seam between sales and marketing very rich. And so we do think about how marketing is going to evolve, but mostly we think about how that seam, how do sellers consume the marketing, and a lot will happen in the marketing space, but ultimately in our world, because every one company can only do so much and do it well, which is why we're not saying, oh, we're going to go take marketing too, even though there are a lot of companies there. What we need to be concerned with is how do we get the right set of marketing inputs, signals, you might
Yeah.
call them, into the sales world to be actioned on, or maybe send action back into the marketing world, because sometimes it's not a straight funnel. And likewise with customer service.
Yeah, I
Means
agree totally.
Yeah.
there shouldn't be
well
a
said.
seam, right? Means
Um,
in how far should at least marketing and sales become one, like customer engagement or however we want to call it?
yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I know at times the industry's had this conversation about customer engagement is both, and it should be all the same thing. And conceptually, yeah, it should, but there's so much in that world. I'm not sure if any one company can kind of serve everything within there. In fact, it's best for the customer if there is a richness of an ecosystem in both places. The 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 important thing is that you get the right data and action in the right place at the time. And I think the whole tech industry is moving that way, right? Away from monolithic platforms that aren't extensible, right? Monolithic platforms that will do everything for you. Think in SAP, um, some of the mega vendors like that, and more into a where's your primary experience for this type of person, and what needs to be in there. And if you can truly build a platform ecosystem, it's great for the customer because you see so much of that innovation happening, um, and it's all in service of the customer.
And from a less from a technology point of view, but from an company organizational point of view. I mean, at the end of the day, marketing and sales want to accomplish the same. They want to
They do.
nurture a prospect to closure.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. And I might
Just-
argue that the reason why you want to have different products for those folks is in most companies are organized to separate those functions. And so if you ask why do you separate those functions, they're doing fundamentally different things, right? You're either generating leads and demand and trying to convert that to a certain point, or you're in this more relationship-based sales that we think about with selling. And marketers develop expertise in the mass, right? And looking at data in mass and channels at mass and working across different channels. And sellers develop expertise in managing opportunities and closing and relationships and so on. So it's different skill sets and different people doing those things. So to me, it makes sense that there would be different technologies serving them.
from a technology point of view, I agree.
Yeah.
But from an objective point of view, they are not. How can technology work in linking that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's our challenge is it's been so separate tools, separate worlds, separate people doing those things, but they are connected. And so how do we support both types of people in doing their jobs, but get that right interface? That again, what is the seam? How do you define the seam? And how do you get the right information crossing the seam?
Okay. Backtracking a little. Earlier we had the software, the intelligent software, or the intelligence is more of a helper, does not prescribe, or should not prescribe, or should not take the decision away from the human, in which we all agree. So the question is, when does a recommendation become an order or a decision?
It's a great question.
I mean, we are lazy too, right? If we trust in the system, we just take the recommendation and all of a sudden it's a decision.
That's a good question. I think it's probably organization by organization. I think there are organizations that will maybe tolerate people taking decisions that are against the recommendations, and others that don't want to. And some of that is just their approach. I think the way that you can sort it out at the end of the day is going back to outcomes, right? You and I may have very different selling styles. I do a whole different set of things than you do. Who's to say who's right? I mean, maybe your way is the way the company said you should do it, and my way is the other way. But at the end of the day, we can look at outcomes and say, wow, Thomas was far more effective. Maybe we should actually, take the recommendations more often, or maybe we should change our selling style if we're not seeing the outcomes we want. In terms of how, when does a recommendation become an order? I think there's also a level of decision that many people will be fine outsourcing. A good example is, maybe there's a sales play that says, hey, seller, you need to call, not email at this stage in the process. And we verified that with data, and we see the outcomes are better when you call, not email. I think a lot of people are willing to take recommendations like that basically as gospel, because it's one more minor decision that's been vetted, and they're just willing to go take. So it's kind of two different ways of answering your question, but I think it's an interesting one, and it will vary by organizations.
You show a lot of love for sales. This is why it's called SalesLoft 22. And you would like to show them where the heat is going on. So you've chosen Texas, you've chosen Austin. It will be hot.
As hot as it gets.
And now, who is wrapping that scenario? Such as, would you like to share with us some of your keynote speakers, which are driving the action towards the people to get them emotionalized?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be in Austin in a couple of weeks for SalesLoft, and it should be great. We will be talking about our product strategy there. We're going to be making a couple of important announcements and explaining kind of where we're going in the next phase. We also have some great speakers, both at the executive events and the main conference. We've got the SVP of Global Revenue from Nielsen IQ, Nicole Colita Davis. We've got Junaid Bennett from IBM, who's a VP over there. A lot of really great speakers, and the website is up if you're interested in going and checking it out. But we're going to be talking a lot about not only where is our product going, but where is sales going, what are best practices, what do those look like. And we've got a great lineup of speakers, as well as a whole lot of sales professionals coming. So it should be good networking as well. Now that we can get back to IRL, I think it's great to do those kinds of IRL events.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Austin is a great city, even if
It's a
it's
great
going to be
city.
even if it's going to be hot enough to melt the soles of your shoes.
Yeah.
Just as a question of not intending to travel to the US, even if it's a thrilling event, is it a hybrid event or is it online? Is it on-site only?
It's on site only, but we will be packaging and making some of the videos available. But in terms of online engagement, we're not doing a virtual summit for engagement. That's
Yeah, but
it's a good question.
I was
Yeah.
just looking to my crystal ball, such as how do all the Europeans, which could use your help, such as in Waldorf or other lovely cities where some products are made, which could use a lot of your sales love, yeah, and get the platform improved on that topic, as you just have to turn text-wise to Austin, Texas, to some of the oracles which are around in these areas, which could need better sales figures these days.
Yeah. We did do a virtual summit in Europe in May, I believe. I spoke at that one as well.
Okay.
And we stay tuned. We may be planning an in-person event in Europe in the fall.
Ah, good for you.
Yeah.
Ralph will have something to do.
That's right.
Somewhere to travel.
That's right.
So,
it's funny. I've been to both hybrid and non-hybrid events since it's become a thing, and there can be some really good hybrid events, but I think there's still something to just being kind of, you're either there or you're not, and then I think distributing the content makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of like you can. It can be really well done to do hybrid, but I think there's also there's a value to being in person.
It's extra mile, it's extra hard work, and salespeople are exactly those which would like to touch and feel, and not only chasing the swag, or to use that nice word I learned, but also to get into touch with the people which are inspiring them. Yeah. And this is easier if you touch and feel.
Yeah.
As Marshall continues to remind us internally here that the hour is about to come to a closure.
I'm a clock watcher. What do you want?
Famous last words, Ellie. So you repeatedly said where the industry is moving, what's basically the next big thing in sales or for sales as a profession. So what is your prediction for sales as a profession, as for sales technology? What's the next big thing?
I think the next big thing is going to be having a place where sellers can really execute and forming that platform around it. And that place has to include really integrated workflow, not just bolt-on stuff, but really integrated workflow. It has to be governed, or large companies won't use it. And it has to have data in the workflow, AI in the workflow, if you will.
When will we have it?
I think we're in the middle of that evolution right now, and I encourage everyone to either come to or watch the videos from SalesLoft to hear more. We really do have some very cool things that we're going to be announcing there.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Very much so, very much so. Even if I probably can't fly to Texas again.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you all for having me.
Thanks a lot from our side as well. This was beyond valuable.
Pleasure
So,
meeting you, and
was
pleasure
also
talking to
extremely
you. It's
pleasure.
been good.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Some
So-
cool inspirations. Thank you very much, Ellie. We are very grateful that we had you.
Thank you, Ralph. Thanks,
Yeah.
Thomas and Marshall.
Thanks to everybody who still is in the audience. We are going backstage now. See you next week.